Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Happy to welcome to the event space first timer, Josh Morgan. Josh, how you doing today?
Good, man. How about you?
Doing pretty well, enjoying this wonderful holiday, I think. Being here with the people where I love to be. So to everybody out there, if you're in the States, hope you're having a wonderful holiday weekend. If you're not, hope you're just having a good day. And if you're rewatching this, hope you had a great holiday weekend. But I want to say first and foremost, Josh, today we'll be talking about commercial lighting for solo filmmakers. So if you do have any questions for him about that you want to get in, please feel free to. If you're joining us here on Zoom, you can use the Q&A tab. If you're joining us on video or Facebook, you can use the comment section. A big thank you, as always, goes out to our sponsors over at Godox. So thank you very much to them for sponsoring this event. But like I told you, Josh, nobody came to see me. Nobody cares about me, maybe a little bit, but they're here to see you. So I'm going to hand over the mic to you and let you get started. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. What's up, everyone? My name is Josh. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm here right now. And I run a YouTube channel called Momentum Productions. This is how I kind of started getting into the YouTube game and just video work and client work in general. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about how I light car videos. So one of my clients is Rezvani Motors. They make these ballistic armored cars. You've probably seen them around, like they're specialty cars. And yeah, Jamie Foxx just got one of them, and it's pretty epic. So we're gonna go over some of the videos that I shot with Rezvani. One in particular, there's this car called the Tank, the Camo Edition. I'm going to share my screen with you in just a moment. I'm going to show you some of the demo shots and how I used one of Godox's lights here, actually two of Godox's lights, the M600 D no-LED LED light. It's a 740 watt light. And then I used this little guy, the TL30. And this is actually a very special light. We're going to be talking about how I got under the car and actually lit up the underside of the car, which is really difficult to do with standard and traditional lights. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you all. We're gonna jump right into my Final Cut Pro project here. Yes, I do edit my videos in Final Cut Pro. I know, yeah, I'm not a Premiere guy. I'm more of a Apple guy. So, all right, so this is a very simple video. All right, the CEO of Rezvani just wanted simple shots of the car. I'm going to play some of this footage back for you. We're also going to be talking about their other car called the Hercules, and I'm going to show you how I lit up that car as well. This car is actually significantly larger, so it was a lot more difficult to light up such a huge car in a small space. So what we did, we rented out a white room or a photo studio, which basically has white walls all around it. So what's really important when you're dealing with white is obviously having the correct white balance, checking your magenta and your green shifts. I mean, a lot has to do with the lighting that you're using and what your camera settings are. Usually I have my camera's white balance set to either between 4800K to 5600K. Here on this shot, I think it was set closer to around 5000K. So yeah, more on that daylight look. So, all right, so let me go ahead and start playing some of this footage with you. I do have a backing, soundtrack here, but we don't need to listen to that. So yeah, these are just simple cuts. I'm on a gimbal here rotating around the Camo Tank. We wanted to shoot a lot of detailed shots, a lot of shots that were covered by the car itself. So I had to really sneak in the TL30, which is this tiny little light, to light up certain parts of the car. I also had to light up really big segments of the car, and that's where I used the M600 D. So as you can see here, just by looking at the shots, they came out relatively clean, no fancy transitions. The CEO, the owner, didn't want to see any of that. He just wanted to get the most accurate color possible, just sharp images that you can easily take screenshots of and just put them on the website. This is actually one of my favorite shots. We have foreground of the car going into the interior part of the car, so you can see the white leather. Really clean, crisp look. And if you notice, you can see that even the back seats are lit up. So I'm going to tell you how I did that as well. This car does not have a sunroof. Now, if you notice, if I go to this shot right here in the beginning, we had one huge over the top softbox or ceiling mounted softbox. It was a huge one. But the problem with that is that it couldn't light up the interior of the car, obviously, because it's covered by the top part of the car. So there's no sunroof, there's no, transparency going into the interior of the car. So I had to use another light, which is why I use the M600 D and the TL30 to light up the interior and the undercarriage of the car. So going back to this shot right here, I actually had the M600 D about 8 feet away from me at about 50% power with a large softbox, and it was just blasting light. And because I was using such a large softbox, I was literally standing in front of it. The light was so soft that it didn't even cast a significant shadow onto the interior of the car. So that's why you don't see any shadows here on the white interior. And honestly, I was blown away. I didn't think that softbox would work that well, but it did. So a lot of this that you're watching right now, these shots weren't really planned from the beginning. Most of these shots were just improvised. I had the CEO right next to me telling me exactly what shots he wanted, but he didn't expect me to bring a gimbal. You can't always expect your clients to know everything about, filmmaking and videography. So you need to have a little bit of a kind of an image in the back of your head. I'm a big car fan, so I know what people usually look for when they're buying cars. So it's important, obviously, to shoot the interior, the exterior, and for some really big car buffs, you want to shoot the undercarriage of the car because that's where the transmission is, the drivetrain, and so forth. And of course, you want to shoot the engine bay. And that's what we did right here. Let me find that shot right here. Yeah, so this is a Dodge engine. This was also lit up with the M600 D. So if I play back the footage, you'll notice that there's a lot of movement. I used a gimbal here going in and out, interior to exterior. Then we have a little bit of the foreground here, this little prop. Let me find it here. So this little thing right here, that little stick is actually what's holding up the engine bay, the lid. So that's what's keeping it open. It's always cool to have foreground in some of these shots, out of focus foreground, and then we have some close-ups of the actual engine that's being used. I believe this was a 1,000 horsepower engine, either 1,000 or 700, I don't remember. Yeah, and that's the exterior shot of the car. Here's some shots of the M600 D being used, and then we have some shots of the undercarriage of the car. This is actually from the Hercules. This is the bigger car that I'm about to show you. Yeah, guys, and at any time during this presentation, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the comments or in the Q&A, and I can answer them live. So, all right, let me stop the screen share really quick. We're going to jump into the slideshow or the Google Slides. Hopefully that thing is working because it usually doesn't like to. All right, let's go over to the slides. Okay, cool. So one of the big things that I look for in lighting equipment is, is it portable? Because in LA, everything is so far spread out that I usually go to my clients and, the Rezvani headquarters is a good 2-hour drive away from me. So I need portability. I need to make sure all my gear can fit in my car comfortably. I usually pack more equipment than I need because you never know when you may need it. So portability is really important. Obviously, light output is in the biggest circle because that's the biggest importance to me, light output and light quality. Versatility, how many different ways you can use that specific piece of equipment. And for some people, effects, that's in the smallest circle because lighting effects aren't that really important for the work that I do. And lighting effects goes for pre-programmed strobe effects, TV simulator effects, that type of stuff I don't really look for in lighting equipment. But yeah, light output, light quality, versatility, and portability. I think those are some of the most important things to look for when you're looking at lighting equipment. So that's why I decided to take out the M600 D and film the car commercial that way. So yeah, a little bit about the Rezvani Tank, I talked a little bit about it earlier. This is the Camo Edition Rezvani Tank. Literally how I had the lighting set up is we had one huge overhead softbox. It had a really bad time lighting a lot of the car, surprisingly. It did a good part lighting up the top part of the car. You know, we used the floor as a bounce, so it reflected a lot of that light back up into the car. But surprisingly, there were a lot of darker areas, a lot of shadows that I needed to light. If you look under here, underneath the inside of the wheel well, you can see that there's a little bit of light peering in. That's because I had the TL30 stuck under the wheel well, lighting up that part of the car. Here as well, the shock, the Fox shock right here under the wheel well, I had another TL30 propped up under there. And these lights have a metal back, so or a magnetic back, so they just snap right underneath the car. So it's really easy to get those types of shots properly lit with that light. Here's some more shots. Again, we talked about the interior being lit as well as the exterior using the M600 D. This is just a basic shot of the Rezvani logo and the camo. So one really quick thing I do want to show you is the problem I had with the green and magenta. So I wasn't really sure what kind of light they were using overhead. I didn't know. I didn't know the specs of the light quality, but I knew that it was casting a really ugly green tint on everything. It also didn't help that the car itself was green, so it reflected a lot of that green tint. So if we go back into Final Cut, I'm going to show you what I did to actually compensate for that. Let me share my screen one more time so you guys see exactly what I'm doing. So right here at the top, I have an adjustment layer. And this adjustment layer allows me to apply effects to everything underneath it. So what I did is that I added a color correction here that would get rid of a lot of that green hue that you would see. So I'm going to disable it, and you can actually see the before. You can see the green that was just surrounding the clip. Even in the interior of the car, it was just so green and ugly. Again, this had to do a lot with, I don't know what light they were using overhead, whether or not it had a green tint being cast on everything. And obviously the car itself is green, so it's reflecting a lot of that color. So I had to adjust it in post by adding a slight green magenta adjustment. And there you go, you get more of a natural color there, especially with the white. You can see the white even looks green. So a white balance adjustment, a green magenta shift adjustment will fix that problem. And that's how this shot actually came out more natural. If I were to hand, the client, Rezvani, this, it doesn't look natural. This is not the colors that they want to promote to their people that are buying these cars. This is way more accurate to how the car looks, especially when I was there and I was looking at the car. This is exactly how it looked like. Yeah. All right, cool. No chat, nothing in the chat, nothing in the Q&A. That's all good. All right, we can keep going.
I did want to ask you a question, Josh. Maybe I misunderstood in the beginning. I thought that you had said that you had set the white balance in the beginning of the shoot. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
You did. Okay. So then I just wanted to pose the question of, so when you set that white balance, because you had that overhead light, were you setting the white balance with that light on as well and just correcting off of that? Or was it something that you had them cut that light and then without any lights on, set the white balance and then came back in later on with your raw footage and then adjusted for that?
Yeah. So I had all the lights on, including that overhead light. I didn't see the green, that green cast in camera. I just, I wasn't really focused on that for some reason. I just didn't see it that well in my monitor. And then I come home, I load up the footage on Final Cut, and I notice that there's a huge green cast over everything. So it wasn't something that I spotted immediately on the shoot. And yeah, I used a standard white card to lock in my white balance, and everything looked good on camera. It wasn't until I got home and loaded up the footage in Final Cut that I noticed that it had a really ugly green tint. So I mean, that happens sometimes. But yeah, you can clearly see like how ugly that just looks. It just overtook the whole entire shot. So
Sure,
luckily,
but I'm
what's up?
sure,
Sorry about that.
but I'm sure that you weren't shooting in like a compressed file format, so you had
No, no,
that
this
latitude
is,
to go and
yeah,
that.
definitely not. This was shot in 10-bit 422. So I was shooting this on the Sony A7S III, this camera right here. This camera always saves me whenever I kind of mess up with lighting on the shoots. You have to understand, like, I'm not perfect with my lighting. Sometimes I mess up my white balance on the shoot. Sometimes I'm not perfect. So that's why it's good to always have the ability to fix your mistakes in editing. So that's why it's important to use a camera that can capture so many different colors and giving you the ability to adjust those colors, manipulate the colors, change the colors. There was another shoot I did with Rezvani where I got the color of the car wrong. I mean, this happens. So I was shooting another car called the Beast. I don't have footage of it loaded on here, but it's a sports car that they make, and it's a cherry red car. And when I was there recording, you know, I don't know what it was with my eyes. Maybe it was just because I was staring at the car for so long that everything else that looked similar to it was exactly that same color. I don't know. It's just my eyes playing tricks on me. I just didn't notice that in camera it looked orange, and I didn't realize that until I loaded up the footage into Final Cut. And I was like, "Is this right?" So I sent a screenshot of what the camera picked up to the owner, Rezvani, and he's like, "The car's not orange. It needs to be red." So I was like, okay, great. Again, I shot it on the A7S III. I was easily able to adjust that color like within 1 minute. I just used the color corrector. I isolated that orange color and I transformed it back into red, along with, I made some other minor adjustments to the ambience. And yeah, it came out great. So yeah, I still make mistakes on my shoots sometimes. Sometimes I don't dial in my camera settings perfectly, but I know that if I make those small mistakes, I'll be able to fix them in post because I have the equipment to do so. So 422 10-bit's really important, especially if you decide to use it with green screens. You know, that's like the best way to use 422 10-bit. But yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, so if we go into, so this is the Hercules. This is another car. This is a 6x6. Let me try and load in some of the footage. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, that's the transmission shot. So this was actually very interesting. Luckily, I didn't know that we were going to be shooting underneath the car prior to the shoot. So as I mentioned earlier, I always pack up my car literally full of equipment to the point where you can open the trunk and stuff will just fall out. Because if I'm driving that far away for a client shoot, I always have to be prepared with the right lighting equipment. And luckily I brought 5 TL30s with me. So these little magnetic lights, and there was no way I could fit a big light like an M600 D or anything similar to that light underneath the carriage of this car, especially with a softbox or anything like that. So what I did is I took, I believe it was either 1 or 2 TL30s, and I just, boom, I propped them up magnetically underneath the car, and it was able to light up the transmission. Because this specific video that we were working on is just showing people how the transmission works, because running a 6x6 all-wheel drive car is pretty insane when it comes down to the engineering behind it. So we had we had one of the people that worked for Rezvani explaining how this transmission worked, and it was really important to get the lighting right. So you can see the drive shaft, transmission here, everything is just lit enough so you know exactly what he's talking about. So actually, let me open up one of the projects. So as you can see here, we had a similar issue with the green tint. I think I shot this on the same day. I don't remember. So yeah, same mistake happened. I didn't see this in camera. So I would have to add that same correction to this shot as well to get rid of that green shift. Yeah, this is all the raw footage. You can see actually how huge this car is. It's massive. So I was really glad that I was able to fix fix this green ship because it's absolutely horrid. By the way, I can easily just take this adjustment layer and apply it to that other footage. Oh, I did actually. I forgot that I did. Okay, I already did that. But yeah, you can see that it was applied. If I take it away, you can see the green come back. And yeah, this is literally how this was all done. I mean, we have more undercarriage shots right here. We had another TL30 propped up. You can't see it in the shot, which is good. We have it propped up on the frame of the bed of the truck somewhere underneath here, and you can see that it's shining right on his face, and it's also shining on the shocks, on the springs here. And we have the M600 D lighting up. This is actually the wheel well. So you can see how massive the wheel well is, and it's just blasting light with the softbox, and it's lit up really well. So you see all the linkages, all the parts that are needed to make this car work. Yeah, here are some more shots, undercarriage shots of the springs. And yeah, and then we have some interior shots as well. Yeah, so this is showcasing the navigation system, the sound system, and even the interior ambient lighting. So you can see how there's no moonroof, there's no transparency, there's no light coming in from the outside from that overhead light. So it was really important for me to have enough power to light up this dark interior. So the other car, the Tank, was white interior. This is dark interior. So you have to have more power, more light coming in. So that is usually always a challenge when you're dealing with darker, with darker leather and stuff like that.
So
And
I
we have
want
some,
to just jump in real quick, Josh, and interrupt you.
yeah.
We did have a question from Jonathan on Vimeo who said,
Mhm.
first of all, he loves your YouTube channel. So
Oh, thank you.
thanks for. I hope you subscribed. I hope you're subscribed. Right? Always click the sub button. But his question to you is, would using a color chart have made things any easier for you?
Yeah, so I have I don't use a color chart. I use a gray card and a white card. Those are just two of the things that I use to set my white balance. Would I think a color chart make things easier? Yes. Why don't I use one? I don't know. It's because we had the studio for 2 hours booked. I was sweating bullets because I didn't think we had enough time. So for me to actually even put in the right camera settings, within 2 hours, it was freaking me out. I had really bad anxiety at times. So I felt like, white card, gray card. All right, let's move on. I really didn't have enough time to dial in every perfect setting on the camera, which is why I rely heavily on lights to do the job. And I rely also heavily on editing to do the job. All I want the camera to do is capture things as close as possible to how I see them. And sometimes, as I mentioned, my eyes are deceiving, so even sometimes that's off. And I just want to make sure the camera just captures the footage. I just want it to capture the footage at its highest quality, highest bit rate, so that way I can do whatever I want to it in post. At the end of the day, for me and the work that I do, I just want that footage captured. All right. Even if it looks like crap at times, I know that most of the time I can fix it. And that's why I rely heavily on the lights and the editing. So yeah, that was a good question. Thank you. All right, cool. So yeah. So the Hercules, yeah, man, this car was the biggest pain to shoot because it barely fit in the studio. And then I needed a light fixture that could throw light throughout the whole entire car. I had the M600 D not at 100% power, but about 80% power because it needed so much light to light up this thing, and even the interior, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah, and the TL30, I also use to light up the interior as well, because this car, it's armored, so there's metal all over it. So it had metal in the door frames, like right here. I don't know if you guys can see it that well, but this was all metal. And I literally just slapped on the TL30s. I'm able to angle them and position the light so it throws itself onto the rear passenger seats, the front passenger seats. So I was able to hide these things everywhere throughout the car. So that was really nice. And you can even change the color. So for example, you can see how there's a blue RGB light coming in through the ceiling. That's from the Rezvani car. It had nothing to do with me. If you want to accentuate that color, what I should have done, now that I'm looking back at it, I would have propped up the TL30s in the same position, but had a little bit of a blue coming out of it. So that way we could see that the blue lights up some of the interior. Just that extra touch would be really, really nice. And again, you can see a little bit of that green coming in as well. So this car isn't camo. It isn't camo. So this tells me that the green is actually coming from mostly from the overhead light. Yeah, you can see some of the green coming here reflecting from the navigation system. So a lot of the green I would suspect is coming in from that overhead light. But luckily you can fix that in post, because it's not such a huge color correction. It literally took me less than a minute to do. And if I show you the actual correction here in my Final Cut effects, if I go to color board here, so I messed around a little bit with the exposure. I think I also did a color adjustment. Yeah, so I subtly adjusted the blue color here. If I put it back to the middle line, you can see that green start to creep up again. There's many different ways you can do this, but I just put in a little bit more blue, and that immediately neutralizes everything. So if we go back to the white room, let's see here, I bring it back to the way it was, you can see more of that green start to pure up. And then, yeah, put up that blue, and that will fix the problem so you can get that accurate white balance. So you can see how minor of an adjustment that is, but to have the ability to do that is really important. So I'm glad that Final Cut at least has this feature. Let me see if there's any more questions coming in. I think we're good with questions, right? Yeah, cool. Yeah, so let me talk a little bit more about the actual light and why I decided to use it. So I know it says M600 on the light, but it's actually a 740 watt light. It sucks 740 watts. It's a significant amount of power. It heats up like no other, which is why it has such a massive fan on it. So let me go back to the actual Google Slides. I'll show you some close-up shots of the light so you can get a better understanding of how it works. All right, here are some specs, by the way, if you're interested in that. 15,000 lux at 10 feet. You get fractional dimming. So it not only does 1% dim, but it can go down to 0.1% dim. With such a powerful light, you want fractional dimming like that. You get special lighting effects, great DMX, Bluetooth, all the standard features that we've seen in a ton of other lights. What makes this light so unique is its output and its color accuracy. So here are some close-ups. We have a huge fan on this thing. The ability to turn it off is always there for you, but I would recommend always keeping it on. Godox also released a new Fresnel lens that you can attach to the light. It makes the light much larger. It increases the output. I think it doubles the output. I don't know the exact numbers there, but I didn't need it for the Rezvani shoot. But if you ever want to replicate the intensity of the sun or something like that for a shoot, you can definitely use this Fresnel for that. And then another close-up shot of the actual body of the light. We have a cool handbrake system, which is always adjustable. The ballast is pretty massive. I can show you a live look of what the ballast looks like. I mean, it's what you would expect out of such a powerful light. You have V-mount compatibility here, 2 V-mounts, but they won't work with any V-mount batteries because the voltage has to be, I think, 24 volts to work with this ballast. My V-mount batteries are too weak for this ballast, so I have to leave this in plugged in. I actually have an Anker power bank that I use to power up this light on the Rezvani shoot, because you don't always have power available to you. So it's important that whenever you're traveling with the light, that it has the ability to be powered off of, batteries, such as V-mount batteries, or if you're bringing like a power bank, like this Anker one I have on the floor, it's a pretty big power bank. You want to have that ability to just power this light wherever you go. So yeah, that's the ballast. The ballast has its own fan in there. The light has its own fan. You can see how thick these cables are. They're massive cables. You're dealing with a lot of power. So that means that if you use thinner cables, it can heat up, can catch fire, and you're going to have some problems. So always look at cables whenever you're buying a light. The cables have to be top-notch quality and fairly thick if you're dealing with a lot of power.
Just to jump in and because you mentioned the fans, I know it's the question that always gets asked, and I know it's the thing that people are always most concerned about, especially if you're shooting video. People are always concerned, well, what's the decibel rating on the fan? Am I going to hear it? How loud is it? So maybe you can answer that for us and let us know. I mean, maybe not the precise decibels. That's fine. I don't expect that. Maybe you have, something to measure that, but, is it something that's audible, that you can hear, or is it pretty well kept?
It's actually whisper quiet. You can hear it for sure, but it's whisper quiet. So right now the light is less than a foot away from me. I can hear the fan, but I doubt that you guys can hear it. That's how quiet it is. And usually I've had a few other lights in the past where the fans were so cheap that whenever they would spin up, you could hear like a little whine. And that was extremely irritating, to the point where I couldn't use the light and I had to get rid of it. So you want a light that has a pretty good fan, that doesn't make you don't want to hear the noise of the actual motor from the fan. You want to just hear the fan itself, the wind coming out of the fan. So that's all you basically hear out of this light, is that fan with the wind coming out of it, the air. But yeah, I would say it's whisper quiet. Don't forget that you also have the ability to turn off that fan inside of the light, but you don't have the ability to turn off the fan that's in the ballast. But what you can do, because the cables are so long, is that you can put the ballast pretty far away from the light. And if audio is really important to you, you can just turn off the fan inside of the light and you should be good to go. But yeah, a good fan is really important. I had another light with the fan die on me, and I didn't notice the fan died on me. It just stopped spinning. And thank God it had like a temperature sensor on it. Otherwise, my house probably would have burned down. I got to the point where I saw like steam, or like, you can see whenever something gets really, really hot, you can see that right above it, it gets wavy or something like that. That's literally what I saw above this light. And that's one step below it catching fire. So luckily it had a temperature sensor and it shut off, but I noticed that the fan just stopped spinning. On some of these cheaper lights, they might not have a temperature sensor, and then they would just keep getting hotter and hotter until it would burn down. So whenever you're looking for a high powered light, you literally get what you pay for. You pay for safety and quality. These lights are no joke. They can easily burn your house down if you're not careful. So make sure you're getting a good quality light. I've been there. I've had chargers catch fire on me, like third party, like little cheap Sony. Hang on, I want to show you. So these little batteries right here, right? The chargers that they make for these batteries on Amazon, like $8-10 maybe, don't buy them. They catch fire. I've had 2 of them catch fire on me. So I learned my lesson the hard way, guys. Don't cheap out on the chargers or anything that holds a significant amount of power in it, because you might run into some problems. But yeah, no problems with the M600. It's kept cool. I've had it at 100% dim before, at full power, in other words, for hours on end. And it's still, it's not cool to the touch. It's warm, but you can still put your hand on it and not burn yourself. So I know that they did a really good job with cooling this light. And I just want to demo the light really quick for you guys. It hasn't been on at all during this live stream. So my walls right now are painted a dark, navy blue. My camera settings, I'm f2.8, 1/50th shutter at 250 ISO. So relatively lowish, darkish camera settings there. You can see that at 0.1%. Look at that. Even with the reflector off, you get a ton of power out of this light at just 0.1%. And obviously we have a standard Bowens mount adapter on here, so you can just attach any accessory you want. And then you can just start creeping up. This is 1%. I can go, that's 10%. And then if I go to 100%, it's literally just going to overexpose everything in this room. And the back wall, I would say, is about 12 feet away from me. So it's a ton of power. It's more than I need for my studio, at least, and it's just enough what I need to shoot these car videos that I do with Rezvani. So you can just see how insanely powerful this. It basically makes my navy blue walls white. So you can see how powerful that thing is. Also, I wanted to mention this light that you guys see right here. This is Godox's newest tube light. It's called the TL180. It's a 6-foot tall tube light. They literally just released it, I think, a week ago. I got it 2 days ago, so I haven't taken it on any shoots with me. But if we do a future live stream at any time, I can tell you my experience with that light. But I just wanted to showcase it a little bit in this live stream. Just had it hanging around there. And yeah, I just wanted to let you know that Godox makes a 6-foot tall tube light that's RGB as well. So yeah, all these tools are really important for my projects. The TL30 saved me in a bunch of different ways. Let me go back to the PowerPoint really quick. Just see where we're at here. Yeah, so again, we talked about the undercarriage, especially the wheel well on the Hercules, so the 6x6 car. This thing had a huge wheel well. You could lie down and it would still be longer than a person. So I'm 6 feet tall. It was longer than me. So that you get, it's pretty huge. And yeah, so we had Michael here on the bottom talking more about the undercarriage of the car. Again, I had the TL30 light him up, and you can see how nice the lighting is. These lights are slightly diffused, not as diffused as much as I want them to be, but you can always add another layer of diffusion. But you can see right here, it lit them up really well. And I think I had it at about 20% dim. And you can see that it also lights up a bit of the undercarriage as well. So yeah, here's some specs about the TL30. You have those effects that we mentioned earlier, lightning effects, a bunch of different RGB cycle effects, literally 2700 to 6300K color temperature range. So, warm to cool blue, basically, and vice versa. And yeah, it has a bunch of cool little features that I think would help you on a lot of these types of shoots that require lighting in tight places. And this was just super, super tight. It also has at full power about 1 hour of battery life, which is not bad given its size and output. So there you go with that. And again, I put 2 or 3 of these lights in the wheel well, just magnetically attach them. And that's how you get this light here on the Fox shock and on these parts of the car here as well. I don't know every single part of the car. I'm not as knowledgeable as this dude right here, but if I did know, I would tell you. This guy literally knows everything about the car. Yeah, so if you want to learn more about what I do, here's some places where you can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok. I post everywhere. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for having me on this live stream. I hope I did a good job showing you how I light my projects.
Well, you're still on the air, so you at least made it this far, right, Josh?
Yeah.
Definitely go check him out if you haven't already. I mean, I've been following along with him. The guy shot. I mean, we were talking about it in the green room beforehand, working out. He shot Mike O'Hearn So anybody out there,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, Michael Hearn.
it's pretty
Yeah, we're
cool.
supposed to be working on a few big projects coming up soon. So yeah, I've shot a lot of fitness content before I got into this content, and I'm slowly getting back into the fitness world. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, listen, Michael.
Yeah.
Anybody in the world of lifting weights knows Mike O'Hearn. So,
Oh yeah.
Jonathan did have another question he wanted to ask you. Is there a sweet spot for a good aperture for this kind of particular commercial? And if so, do you keep shooting at that aperture or do you change based on shot? And lastly, give you a second to process all that. Lastly,
Yeah.
did you shoot at 30 frames per second? He particularly likes to shoot at 24, but he hears that 30 frames per second or above is best for commercials. What are your opinions on that?
Okay, cool. So I'll start with the aperture. First of all, okay. So let me go to this image right here. Throughout this whole entire shoot, I did not use the same aperture simply because I wanted more than one part of the car to be in focus. So I would increase the aperture number. Let's say I got up to, I think, f10, f10 or f11 probably even. Yeah, just because I wanted more things to be in focus. There's obviously huge downsides to shooting at such a high aperture number. If you have any specks on your lens, they're going to be visible almost immediately. So you have to make sure you have a clean lens and a clean sensor. But on the right here, you can see that I'm shooting at a much more open aperture. Here, I believe I was at about 2.8. Yeah, I was shooting on a Sigma. So I was shooting at f2.8. That's how I was able to get a soft foreground and a sharp background. So it depends on the details that you're shooting. Usually wides of a car, this was all in focus, obviously, because it's on the same plane. But here I was shooting on f2.8. I didn't care about the background because it was just white. But if I need to get specific details that have depth in it, like a background, foreground, I do shoot at lower f-stop numbers like 2.8, just so I can get that soft foreground and that focus on the subject here, which is the interior. And the other question was the frame rate. So I used to think 30 frames was awesome. I don't shoot in 30 frames anymore. I shoot mainly in 24, but mainly for this shoot, I shot at 120 frames, simply because there were times where I was handheld, like underneath the car, I couldn't have a gimbal with me. So I needed to shoot at 120 frames for me to have the ability to slow it down in post. So that way I can do some cool handheld shots on the undercarriage shots of the car. And I thought that was very important. A lot of the shots were actually shot in 60 frames per second, again, giving me the ability to slow it down half in post or down to 40% in post, because my goal here is to export everything out in 24. It just looks better. And if you compare the footage side by side between 30 and 24, you can really start seeing a difference. But usually for like commercial shoots, I do like to shoot at higher frame rates. Overall projects, like when I shot with Michael Hearn, a lot of videos like that are shot in 24 frames per second. Workout videos, I don't usually incorporate a lot of slow motion in there, just a lot of real-time movement. So 24 frames is how I like to do things most of the time. But yeah, commercial stuff, higher frame rate, it just gives you that extra flexibility in post if you want to highlight a specific feature of a product.
Cool. And I wanted to go back to the beginning because you did mention that in this particular shoot with the CEO of Rezvani, that he kind of had his own sort of shots that he wanted captured and was kind of integral in the shoot. Is that something that you find is very typical, where you'll go into a shoot and have to kind of work with somebody who's got their own vision versus what your vision is? Or do you typically like to do it where you kind of set your shot list prior to getting to the actual shoot and then get there, do those, maybe get some input from the client, and then wrap it all up?
It basically depends on how much time we have. So with the Rezvani shoot, I had 2 hours max. There was no time for me to, and he's a really busy guy. If I were to submit a shot list to him, he probably would never get back to me. He's very busy. He has things he has to do. So I knew in the back of my head that a lot of it's going to have to be improvised, and he's going to actually guide me through the specific shots that he wants. People like Michael Hearn will love a shot list. He's also very popular and on a very tight schedule, but surprisingly, he knows a lot about videography and filmmaking. Like he deals, he's been on tons of magazine, like he's been around cameras. So he has some knowledge behind, how to read a shot list and how to do all that stuff. So it just depends on the client. It depends on how much time you have. But yeah, a shot list can definitely make things go by a lot smoother. But I learned that you can't have an ego in this business. So if you have a specific idea and it clashes with the client, you have to remember that it's about what the client wants. The client is the one that's paying you. So there's always a good middle ground with the client. You can always, if they're a legitimate client, a legitimate business, they'll always meet you somewhere. So that way you're both happy. And that's just what my experience has been.
Awesome. Well, Josh, I want to thank you for being here. If anybody takes anything away from this, don't buy third-party battery
Oh my God, no.
from Amazon.
No, that was such a mistake. Oh,
that's it. That's B&H. Come to us. We've got,
yes,
we've got,
they sell legitimate stuff. Don't buy those bad battery chargers, please.
That's my B&H plug for the week. Okay. but thank you so much. I want to thank you for being here, showcasing the M600 D, the TL30, correct? That was the TL30. Yes. And then the newest light was the U30.
So the TL30 was the little one, M600 D is this big guy right here, and then the TL180 is that tube light in the back there.
TL180, there you go. So check them out. We did drop the links to those in the chats. So wherever you're joining us from, whether it be Zoom, Vimeo, Facebook, you could check them out. It'll take you straight to the page. You can get some more information. And as always, we want to thank Godox for sponsoring this event and everybody at home for tuning in. So we hope you enjoyed it. This has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much. See you later, guys.